So I wanted to quickly go over the important things to look for when founding your first settlement in Civilization 7. The first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that your lenses are toggled on for yields, hex grid, or resources. And then finally, the settler one is important as well. And so what these different ones do is they give you a bunch of information. The settler one is important because it shows you where freshwater is. Freshwater is designated by this blue color right here. If you settle on the yellow, that is where there is not freshwater and you will take a happiness bonus. As you can see, it says no freshwater is available on this tile, and you can't even settle on the red ones. Usually it's where a river is, where a resource is, etc. Now, the things that you want to take into consideration when settling is where your resources are and whether you'll be able to reach all of them. So if you didn't know, your cities can build out to 3 tiles away from it. So for example, we can reach this tile, we can reach this tile, and then the tiles in between. So we will, if we settle right where we are, we will be able to settle and gather this iron, which is pretty good as it gives your infantry units +1 combat strength. Now that isn't quite what we want to go for right at the beginning. The most important resource to go for at the beginning is our fish. With the +3 food, you get your resources at the top in the resource allocation. Now food, at least in my opinion, is the most important resource to go for at first, just because it helps you grow your village. And when you grow your village, you can add more growth and more production to build more buildings, which helps you grow faster. So anyways, we're going to build found our settlement right here. And yeah, so we're looking great. We do get to choose our first production. We'll just do a scout and then we'll go to our next turn, choose our technology. This is not important. We can just skip right through here, do that. And anyways, now we get to grow our city. Your first growth can be pretty important. As you can see right now, our production is 5, 5, and then 0, 3, 7. Your base production from your buildings, if you click on this, you can go into your building breakdown and your citizen growth, as well as your yields breakdown. So for citizen growth, it shows that we'll get a new citizen in 5 turns. That's where your growth is. Then your happiness per turn, this affects your celebrations. And then the food per turn, this again is the food needed for population to grow. So as you can see, it'll take 5 turns to get there. So moving on to your building, your palace just on like baseline gives you +5 to food, production, and happiness. If we add to our food, that will lower the number of turns it takes for our population to grow, which allows us to expand. Then finally, this is just your production bay breakdown. So anyways, we're going to want to grow our city towards the fish, as growing towards the fish will allow us to expand more quickly. So we can just put this guy on lookout. We're not going to worry about our scouts right now, as we're just going through this to be able to grow our city again. Now, as you can see, we can grow to the fish, and this is great because we'll get the 2 food from the fish, or from that tile, but we'll also get 3 extra food from the fish. So as you can see, if we take this off, we'll lose 3 food. So now if we look at our city and we go back to the next citizen, your food needed to grow population does go up. However, because we're now at 11 per turn, it still only takes 5 turns. So as long as you're getting more food with each growth, you'll be doing well. Now you can also increase your food count by building buildings like the granary. Now the granary it has a base yield, but the important part is it adds +1 food on farms, pastures, and plantations. There's also a warehouse food building, which means it's ageless, is buildable in all ages, and it can be purchased in towns. So basically this building becomes more strong over time. The more farms, pastures, and plantations you have, the more yield it will give you. Now, one interesting thing that we can do is we can actually build it on this tile that we've already placed down a farm on. And so it'll say you must convert this urban district to a granary, or you must convert to an urban district to build a granary. Selecting this tile will remove the existing farm from the urban district. Now the interesting thing that this allows us to do is it actually allows us to pick our population back up and place it somewhere else. So now we can place this population anywhere that we want, and we could start expanding towards a different resource. So say we want to go for the horses. It's not really applicable because we don't need the cavalry yet, but say we just do. This will allow us to get the horses next turn, whereas if we hadn't built that on that tile, it would take us 2 gross. So that is something to be aware of. You can do different mechanics to skip ahead when building a building on a tile that is already taken up by a rural district. So I'm just going to go through a couple of examples to give you all an idea of what different starts would look like. This game doesn't have any interesting resources at the start. None of these are particularly good at going off for. However, there is a reason to move our settlers, and that is because This tile right here has 2 food, whereas this tile only has 1 food, and you do not get the starting resources of whatever you're on. As you can see, when we found this and we go to our city, we just have the standard 555 production. You don't get the tile that was on. So now, because of this, this will allow us for our first growth to be able to grow onto the 2 food and 1 happiness instead of just the 1 food. Or basically, it gives us an extra food for the entire game. So that can be something to look out for. Make sure that you're not settling on a tile that you really care about. Also, we just happen to get lucky. As we grow our village, we would want to grow out towards the cotton because we get the +2 food, +2 production. That's honestly one of the best resources to look for at the beginning of the game. Really, really strong right there. Okay, so this is another interesting example. There are a bunch of good resources, especially the camel, which allows you to increase the number of resources that can be assigned to a city, and then the cowlin, which is really, really good for early game growing. It's also great for late game because you can add it to another city and give +4 food, which is pretty huge actually, especially if you're just getting a city off the ground. So let's get into the settler view, and we do want to move our settler over 1 right here because it will allow us to get to this cowlin faster, and while it won't give us +4 food to our capital, it will give us +2 from the cowlin plus the 3 just from that spot. So that's a very, very solid resource to get. So what we're going to want to do is we'll move our guy here, and we'll switch turns, and then we will put down our thing. Put down a scout, go next turn. We'll grow our city real quick over towards the Cowlin, and then we go for our technology. Build another scout, command unit. We'll just do that. And we'll wait till we can grow real quick. And then as you can see, we can get this pretty quick, and the Cowlin will be put into our city. So the next resource that I would grow towards is probably the iron. It will help you a bunch early game with your combat strength, and getting that 2 extra production is pretty huge. Not 2 extra production from the iron, but just the 2 production on that square. And from there, I'd probably go for the camels just because they're so good once you get a bunch of resources from your trade routes. So this start is an example of a great start. We have the sheep, which provides 2 production and 2 happiness, and we have the dates, which is +2 food, +2 happiness. So our resources are looking amazing. This is a great place to just put down our city and get going. We're pretty close to the water as well. We can go for our scout just as always, and then just none of this matters. Skip past all of this, put it on lookout. And yeah, so we can do our first growth. Personally, I would say that the food is more important than the production. We will go down to the production right after the food, but first let's grow towards the dates. So as always, we can build our second scout, not the granary, and we'll just put them on scouting for right now. And then we can grow our city onto the dates finally. So now we can choose a technology. Again, we're not worrying too much about that right now. We're just going through things, go for our government, social policy, production, and science is usually what I'd go for, honestly, on most characters. And moving on from there, we get to grow our city down towards the sheep, looking great. Choose another production. Usually I'd go for a 3rd scout, actually. I like having 3 scouts, send 1 up, 1 down there, 1 down there. But, it's totally up to you, and it does depend on what civilization you're going for. So I wanted to explain exactly how this growth mechanic works, where if you place down a production building on one of your already, urban tiles, you pick up your guy and then you can grow somewhere else. I just wanted to show that, say we wanted to get the sheep, we wanted to pick up one of our growth tiles and then put it on the sheep this turn. If we put our granary down on this tile right here, so we're going to turn that into rural, and then we can grow our city, we should be able to get the sheep, right? Oh, no, we can't. So the reason this is because now we don't have a grow tile right there. So what you need to do is, instead of picking up that tile, we'll load the game real quick. Should load pretty fast. So instead of producing the granary on this grow tile, instead you need to produce it on this tile. And the reason is you can only grow cities where you already have a grow tile connected. So we can grow it all around the dates because that's 1, and we can grow it all around here because that's 1. So anyways, make sure that you're careful about where you place down your urban districts. It does affect where you can grow. So now we can take the sheep. Now we're looking at really, really good. We have sheep and dates, +2 production, +4 total happiness, +2 food, and our capital is looking really, really good by turn 9. So that was just some examples of where you might want to settle and grow to when you're starting out in Civilization 7. Keep in mind that some of the civilizations do have bonuses depending on where you're settled. The Maya gain zero point 0.5 science for every adjacent vegetated terrain. The Egypt has +1 production on navigable rivers. That's something that you'll learn with time. I mean, there are quite a few civilizations. And yeah, so anyways, keep that in mind. Read what your civilization does when you get into it. But other than that, it's pretty simple. Once you've started a number of games, it should be pretty clear where you want to grow to. Something you can do just to practice is you could always just start like 10 games in a row and just figure out where you want to start. That'll make it really easy over time. It's just like practicing anything. So anyways, I'll have some more guides coming out later this week on different parts of Civilization 7. I've been having quite a bit of fun so far. And yeah, anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.